It's a new year, and what's the best thing to do at the start of a new year? Take a look behind you at the one you just left. So as was the case with 2014, in 2015 I did actually see enough movies to comfortably do a top 10 list. Now, I didn't see everything, I didn't even come close, but I did see pretty much all the stuff that I really wanted to see. But this is hardly going to be a comprehensive list. This is going to be subjective as heck. This is just my personal list for what I got around to seeing. Let's get to it. Number 10. Avengers Age of Ultron. I did like Avengers Age of Ultron, but ultimately it does clock in as a bit of a disappointment. And ultimately it ends up being one of those experiences that after having seen it, I can nitpick it apart like nobody's business. But honestly, while watching it, I had a lot of fun, and there's a lot I enjoyed about it. And there's a lot of individual elements that I really love. I love James Spader's Ultron villain. I love the entire climax of the movie and how they prioritize getting the people to safety. The dynamics between the characters are about as good as they've ever been. The new characters were good and well integrated, I felt, and the old characters were back and good in a way they always were. In the case of Hawkeye, better than he was last time. Just a good time all around. Number 9, the Peanuts movie. You know, the term nostalgia gets used generally in a fairly derogatory way these days, but I have to say that this is nostalgic in the best possible sense. This is exactly what you remember about Charlie Brown and Peanuts TV specials. It doesn't mess with it. It doesn't try and reinvent it. I mean, it's a slightly different visual style, but this is exactly what you remember, and it gives you that. And if you enjoyed these things at all, it's just gonna hit you in the right place. It makes you go, ah. That's just nice. Number 8, Mr. Holmes. This is the one that I think flew under a lot of people's radar, partly because it got a limited release, but also partly because I'm not sure people really understood what they were getting into going to see it, because it does feature Ian McKellen as a very elderly, retired Sherlock Holmes, and it does feature, you know, him sort of revisiting a case, but it's not a Sherlock Holmes mystery. Certainly not if your introduction to Sherlock Holmes was stuff like Elementary or the BBC Sherlock series or the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock. It's not any of those things. This is a meditation on aging is what it is, and it uses Sherlock Holmes as a vehicle to tell that, and uses the audience's presumed familiarity with that character as a way to sort of demonstrate the difficulties of aging. And for me, it just hit me personally, and I found it to be very well done and very powerful and very well paced. And for me, the fact that it was Sherlock Holmes and it had that little bit of mystery going on made it sort of easier to swallow, because it deals with some heavy stuff that if we're just hammering them too hard, I probably would have resented the movie for it. But funneling it through Sherlock Holmes made it more digestible, but it was still very powerful. Certainly for me, although admittedly probably not everybody's cup of tea. Number 7, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This might actually be my favorite Mission Impossible movie, and it really does just take the best parts out of all the previous movies. Because the thing about the Mission Impossible franchise is, because it's got a new director every time, the emphasis and what's good about each entry tends to change film to film. So what this one did is we got our first bit of sort of legitimate espionage that we've had really since the first one. From the third one, it took a really good villain, because, you know, most of these have not had great villains. And from the fourth film, it took the really big set pieces and the wonderful stunts. And from the second film, it took nothing, because the second film sucked. You add in a really awesome female character, Tom Cruise still being really good at doing this stuff, Simon Pegg being fun, the action being well shot, and yeah, this was just well executed adrenaline. Number 6, Kingsman: The Secret Service. Boy, did this one come out of nowhere. It was kind of on my radar because I really like the director, Matthew Vaughn. He hasn't made a bad movie yet. And this is James Bond for the new generation. And it's violent, and it's funny, and it's vicious, and it's clever. And it's self-aware in a very unpretentious way, and the performances are all great. I mean, Colin Firth is an action star. Who knew? The main character as well, he was really good. And actually, all the young actors were really good. And Samuel L. Jackson was a little bit off, but in a really intriguing and fun way. Everyone just seemed to really just be having so much fun making this film. And it's one of those things where the fun that they are having bleeds out, and you just get that same feeling watching it, and the fact that it's well executed on top of all that, yeah, this is just a great time. Number 5, Inside Out. This is Pixar doing what they do best. Taking an interesting idea and just diving into it the best way that it can be done. Just the little voices inside your head, the different emotions that you feel, who's in control, who doesn't get along, how does the inside of your brain work, not on any sort of actual legitimate neurological sense, but like in a sort of a psychological examination way. And it's really fun and it's really clever, and I teared up at a few points. If you've seen the movie, you know what part it was. Yeah, I did. But you did too, don't you lie. Number 4, Ex Machina. I just really love the way this film examined its questions of identity and what it means to be human, what it means to be enslaved, what it means to have rights, what it means to be property. And its look at manipulation and human nature, and wonderful performances at the heart of this. The 3 main actors in this are just phenomenal. It is gorgeously shot. It's stunning that this was the first movie that Alex Garland actually directed, but this is directed so assuredly, and it's really cleverly put together, and the way it's constructed really very carefully elicits very specific reactions from the audience. And I mean, it's a think piece and it's a little bit of a slow boil, so if that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, probably best to skip it. But if that kind of thing intrigues you, I would absolutely say check this out. Now, before we get into the top 3 and the best of this year, I do want to pause for just some quick words about some things that didn't make this list. In fact, didn't even come close. I want to give a dishonorable mention to my biggest disappointment of the year, which was Spectre. It was not the worst movie I saw this year, but considering that Spectre was my second most anticipated movie of 2015, yeah, that was a really big disappointment. However, I do want to give an extra special dishonorable mention to Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Undoubtedly the worst movie that I saw this year. It was like, it's a checklist of all the worst quirky indie cliches that you have ever seen. And I don't have an inherent hatred of quirky. You want to see quirky done well, see Juno or see Away We Go. Those had characters with quirks. This was walking quirks that they tried to pass off as characters. I really hated this movie. But let's get back into positive territory and get to number 3, Mad Max Fury Road. Boy, you know, with all the remakes, reboots, revisits that we get these days, and so many of them just being and some of them being atrocious, who would have thought that so long since the previous Mad Max that the original director, who is not a young guy anymore, could just show up and show everybody how to do this, how action is done, how commentary is done in a way that doesn't beat you over the head and doesn't interrupt the movie, and how just letting the visuals tell the story. Because I mean, this is a rich world, but they don't stop and explain it. You just absorb it from everything that you see. And the performances are great. Tom Hardy is what Max should be. And of course, Charlize Theron as Furiosa is just fantastic character. And the whole I mean, it's really just a 2-hour chase movie, but man, this thing does not quit. Almost up to the top, number 2, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Now, this thing actually, I knew it was going to be on my top 10, but it's been edging up higher since I saw it a second time, and the more and more that I've thought about it. Is it on a technical level better than, say, Mad Max Fury Road? No, it's not. I can pick it apart more, but honestly, it just brought me right back there, and it cut through all the cynicism that was left behind after the prequels and the special editions and all the BS. I like the way the old characters were used. I love the new characters. I love the instant camaraderie between Poe Dameron and Finn. Rey is a fantastic new lead. I'm really fascinated by Kylo Ren. I'm not going to get more detail than that because it's all spoilery, but I don't know why that's stopping me. Everybody's seen the movie by now, but it's great. If you are a Star Wars fan, especially if you favor the original trilogy, this is what you wanted. Now, I don't say that derisively. I know there are people, generally younger, but there are people who like the prequels or grew up on the prequels or prefer the prequels, and that's fine. But speaking as someone who grew up on the original trilogy, yeah, this was what I always wanted in terms of continuation of the Star Wars story. But as much as I enjoyed Star Wars The Force Awakens, it does not take the top spot. The top spot was a movie I expected to like. I would never have called that I would like it as much as I do, though, and that is The Martian. Ridley Scott, you can still make a truly legitimately good movie, heck, great movie, with a wonderful central performance from Matt Damon. But every single performance in this movie is terrific. Everyone's bringing their A game, and really that's what makes this movie so good. It's just everyone who took part in it. Ridley Scott, Drew Goddard, who wrote the script, the cast, the crew, cinematography, everything. Everyone is just doing their job exactly as it needs to be done. Nobody's doing half measures. Everybody's on their A game, and we just end up with this terrific, tight product. I swear this thing was scientifically calculated almost to the second, because we'd be on Earth watching, the groups there trying to figure out how to get him home, and I would get just the slightest hint of a tingle of the thought of, I kind of wonder what's going on with Matt Damon on Mars right now. And then I swear to God, the instant I even had the hint of that thought, it cuts to him again, and then it spends the exact amount of time that I needed with him before going back again. Just, this thing is so tight and so wonderfully put together, and it is my favorite movie of 2015. I have to say, it has been a pretty good year overall as far as movies go, at least for the ones that I saw. But what about you? What was your favorite movie of 2015? Or if you want to give me a whole top 10, feel free to put something down in the comments. Whatever it is, go ahead and let me know. Feel free to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at Council of Geeks, and also check out the Council of Geeks podcast. Yeah, the pluggy of this stuff is going to become standard on this thing, and I'll put links to all the other stuff that I've got going on in the description of this video. So, until next time, this council is adjourned.